Welcome back, everybody. I am really excited to be here today to introduce to you Tony Barton. And if you're with me here on the YouTube channel, you can see us both sitting right here. I just want to say welcome. Many of you have come to me to ask about teacher rights, some of you in person and some have written me emails, but I thought it would be really neat to have someone from TPUSA, and we'll get into that in just a second, share with you some information, because last year, as I alluded to in one of my posts, we've had a lot of breakthrough when it comes to our rights in terms of sharing about our faith. And so I'm excited to introduce Tony to you this morning. So welcome, Tony.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to
Yes.
be here, and I was really excited about the opportunity to be able to just talk about TPUSA, faith, and what we do, and then some of the things that are going on.
Yeah.
So, TPUSA Faith is a division of Turning Point with Charlie Kirk. The basis of our work involves informing, educating, and then engaging Christians, whether pastors, individuals in church, teachers, whoever, to really make a stand in their faith and not compromise who they are, as a world tries to intimidate us to shut down and to stop and to quit. And so we offer a number of courses and resources directed in that fashion to just kind of have, number one, biblical citizens, but also people having courage, and you know what I mean, whatever their sphere of influence is, being courageous in their faith.
Yeah.
So, that takes us all over. I have a 4-state region: Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska. I do a lot of traveling, meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, teachers, administrators included, and so there's a lot going on. And
Yeah.
there are two things. One, there are some resources that aren't complete yet that
Okay.
TPUSA Faith is working on. But
Mhm.
then there is something that just happened, and I just got information on this today. And we've got a couple, 2, 3 different groups of teachers. We've got Christian teachers that are working in the public school system. We
Mhm.
have Christian teachers, obviously, where they're working in the private school setting. And then we have, this a group that are saying, hey, let's do something new. And what has happened is the door to private school through churches is opening up, and it's
Right.
becoming another means to educate our children, and to see them grow up knowing our values and our principles versus being in the public school setting where they're trying to tear that all down.
Mhm.
So I had written a note, Turning Point Academy, and in fact, right now they're sitting with 20 school planners, and they're looking to expand and grow. And so there's information on that can go to the pastor, and then they can work on, if there's wanting that,
Mhm.
that option to work on that within the church setting, and have a school there where their kids can grow up learning truth and reality versus some of the things that's being taught in the public school setting.
That's
And even
awesome.
private schools. My youngest went to private school. We homeschooled a number of years,
Okay.
which is also another option that's coming about,
Yeah.
especially since the supposed pandemic, whatever. But homeschooling is huge. It's growing. It's no longer taboo. But also, too, the alternative to have
Mhm.
the capacity to not only teach in public school, private school, but then now teach through a school that's been developed in the church itself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. There's been all these new options that have arisen. And so we have people, and some of the people that are following me, Tony, they have switched from public to private. Some of them are still standing where they're supposed to be. And my encouragement to them is just listen to the Spirit of God. Where are you supposed to be for this season? And I know even with our kids, we're even asking that at home at our house, like, Lord, how long are we supposed to be at these schools? We're ready to move when you call us to, but we want to also trust you in what we're called to. And so I just think that's such a good, like, knowing your lane, know where you're supposed to
Amen.
be.
And God calls people to different settings.
Right.
My
Right.
wife's an RN and has been for quite a long time, and she works in the infirmary in the prisons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Langston
Mhm.
Correctional Facility,
Mhm.
and not an invite. It's a madhouse in that place. You were to hear some of the things that go on there. It's absolutely crazy. It's insane, and
Oh, I bet.
with individuals, but she feels called to that. And
Yeah.
same thing, I'm like saying that, just drawing a parallel, the teachers feel called to certain settings, and that's where
Mhm.
they do, God's work. They do the Lord's work in those settings, whether it's
Right.
public, private, a co-op of some sort, or again, where they're developing schools within churches now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's really good.
yeah,
Um, I know that I've asked you for some help researching a question that many of us have been asking, and it's what laws actually changed when it comes to what we can and we can't do in public school as Christian teachers. And some of us probably are going to private school that isn't necessarily like a Christian private school, too. We've got classical schools out there. There's all sorts of different models
sure.
that we have, but we've got believers stationed in different areas. And so I'd love you to speak a little bit about the laws that have changed recently.
Well, let me do this first.
Yeah.
You may have this resource. It's called the Teacher's Guide to Religion in the Public Schools.
Hmm.
A lot of good information as into what you can actually do and what you can't do and how to handle those things. It's a great resource.
And that one's by Liberty First, right?
This is
At
not this
Liberty
is by First Amendment,
First
uh,
Amendment. Okay. Okay.
and it's really good. It's solid. Um, in regards to laws, let me just say this first. I served in the state legislature. I was the representative for the 41st district, which is Leavenworth, and I actually sat on the education committee. And real interesting. One of the things that we were able to do, and I was on the forefront of this when Common Core was a daily. You heard it all the time. You heard Common
Right.
Core, which you don't really hear much of anymore. I don't
Right.
think it's way, but it's not talked about. We were actually able to get it out of committee. I was able to get these guys to do that for the first time, get it out of committee to the floor. It failed on the floor, but we were actually able to get it out of committee. People begin to understand what it was really all about and the destructive nature of Common Core. And but it failed on the floor. We didn't get enough support for it. But that was probably one of the for me a defining moment when I looked at education and I'm going, boy, there's some real issues. My kids were homeschooled at the time,
Hmm.
and so we were out of the public school setting for a number of reasons, namely, the values that they're trying to teach in public school conflict with my own and what I wanted my kids to grow up with. We're all
Yeah.
now. And one of the groups that we also worked with was the Alliance Defending Freedom, and you're
Okay.
talking about the laws that are changing. There's some really interesting things that have happened that they're a part of, and we worked with them while I was in the House, and they are passionate about teachers and teachers' rights and dealing specifically with the First Amendment.
Okay.
And what they say, what they can't say. But I just want to hit on a few of these if I can here. School tells Christian teacher to put her beliefs aside. And what they basically did to this lady, her name is Vivian Gergety, is tell her that she would have to use the pronouns to approach her children. If they asked, the kids in the class asked, that she would have to call them by whatever pronoun or whatever gender that
Right.
they were
Right.
saying. And she said, no, that goes against my beliefs, and I don't want to do that. I'm a Christian, and I'm paraphrasing here.
Hmm.
And what ended up happening is she went into a meeting. One of the board members came in with the principal, and they basically fired her, sent her home.
Wow.
So
Uh-huh.
this one is before the courts right now, and I think they're waiting for a date for the hearing to take place. And this is the latest one. But all of these all stem from the First Amendment rights that we have, and it's
Okay.
the issue here is the establishment of religion, which they're not doing. They're just living out their beliefs, in the classroom and not wanting to compromise. And I'll say this
Hmm.
again later. Compromise is part of the problem here when it comes to who we are and what we believe, whether in the school setting or whatever else. We can't compromise. And the thing
Hmm.
that I love about these different teachers is that they didn't. And their
Hmm.
cases actually are going to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they're winning. And it's
Awesome.
exciting. It really is.
Now, Tony, I want to back up a little bit because a lot of our people don't know about how the lemon law was broken last year.
Say again, I'm
Um,
sorry.
the lemon law. He's
Okay.
got construction going on upstairs, so Tony's
Yes.
bearing with us here. So on my end, I can't hear it, just so you know. So lemon law was broken last year, which opened up the door for more freedom in the classroom. Did these cases come out of, are they being thrust forward more easily into the Supreme Court because Lemon was broken? Or are these related to another, did they get in another way? I'm just curious.
I think it may be both, and I don't think it really states that it was that in particular, but there is this place where the challenge has been to the First Amendment and the First Amendment rights of Christian teachers in the public school setting, and they are not, they're being forced to set what they believe, their beliefs aside when they walk in the public school setting, but that's not what they are have to do. They don't have to. They can, it doesn't matter what setting you're in. In a public school, you're a Christian in the public school system, and you can still function out of what it is that you believe. So the challenge has been to the First Amendment. And here's another one. In the Virginia Supreme Court issued on Monday, affirming a lower court's decision. And this was to reinstate this teacher who was again being forced to address students by their gender that they said, I say that I'm this, and and he said, no, I'm not doing that. Went to the Supreme Court and they won. And these are lines freedom cases.
And who pays for these? Like, I know I have teachers that are like, okay, if I say no, then what happens from there? Do you know? Like, how do they?
The Alliance Defending Freedom, as far as I know, there's not a charge for them. These are cases that they take.
Okay.
And I've called them probably 3-4 times on issues, and they evaluate the case. If it's something that they're going to do or can do, they'll do it. And it's just like that. There's as far as I know, there's not a fee, because you're right. And I think that's part of the squeeze, is to say, well, if you take this to court, you're going to end up paying millions of dollars for this. You can't afford it. So let it go. But they don't, and they work with the individual, the teacher or whoever they work with them on that. And I believe there isn't a charge to them if they take the case. I think they're funded separately. So there's one in a Christian school. This one is about how a Christian college actually partnered with an elementary school to do some teaching. And the school district said no because of their position on marriage and gender. Well, it's gone to court. ADF has taken it to court, and they have won their case. And so again, there's another challenge to ADF is really good. They really are. When it comes to things like this, they are just so sharp. And it's not just, they have other cases that they work on. This is strictly dealing with the school system and the public school.
So Tony, if I have a teacher that hears our broadcast and they have something come up where they are facing the pronouns, because that's been something that we've been talking about, then that they could contact Alliance for Defending Freedom, ADF, and they would help them move forward. You would encourage them
to do that. Oh, absolutely. Because they're winning. And see, that's the thing. That's the beauty of it, is they're winning these cases, and the teachers are able to go back and be themselves. Before, there was just not a lot of options out there. And if you were to, go against the school and you're wanting to take the case to court, then it would be something that you would have to take out of your pocket. And again, teachers, individuals, in a whole, aren't making a lot of money where they can go ahead and do that. And so Alliance Defending Freedom is a supporter of teachers, and they are doing a phenomenal job in getting some of these grievances taken care of. And it's wonderful. I'm just so happy to see that happen. The football player that the coach that was praying
Coach
on
Kennedy.
Coach Kennedy, exactly. On his case, and it was Alliance Defending Freedom that supported him in that.
That's awesome.
It is, and
I heard also, because I watched a little video on his case, actually was the one that got used where it opened up for the Lemon Law to be broken. And just for people who haven't heard about the Lemon Law being what that even is, like I'm going to explain in a super simple term, and maybe Tony will jump in and explain more. But basically, there's been a law since 1971. Is that a correct year? I think it is.
I think so.
1971. And what happened is there was an arbitrary decision that was made by the Supreme Court during that time, that any way that religion was, it was particularly Christianity, was displayed throughout our nation would be removed. So that was like the prayer in schools, that was the display of the 10 Commandments in any form or fashion. So think of your park with a memorial, not a memorial, but a what do you call it? A display of the 10 Commandments, a cross of any form. Like, I think I've even seen things in the news in the past few years about like, our cross is okay at Arlington, even at the cemetery, silly stuff like that. So basically Lemon said, this is ridiculous. Why is this even an issue? It's okay to now have a Bible at school on your desk. It is okay to display the 10 Commandments. I know here in Kansas, we have an organization called that Donna Lippolt works for, and it is I'm spacing out the name right this moment. It is
of her
Culture Shield.
Culture Shield.
And
Yes,
she is very much about reminding us that we have rights to have, like, "In God We Trust" posters in our classrooms, in our businesses, like anywhere that you're working in a public space, you have the right. Plus there's a governmental agreement that you can do that. But it's these little things that have crept in. And so some of us, we were born way after 1971, and we've got even younger teachers than that, who are coming in, and we've never experienced, even as students in a public school, having the right to express freedom of religion. And so kids are allowed to share their faith. You are allowed to answer questions. You're allowed to pray at lunchtime, before school, after school. You can participate even in the meet you at the poll. This is my understanding. You can go to those as long as you've got your work prepared for the day and it's not infringing on your being with your students when they're in your classroom. You are allowed to host Bible studies, because I know I was told at my first middle school I was not allowed to do that. That's actually infringing on my rights. It was back then too. And so you have a lot more freedom than is recognized. In fact, in the new Liberty Council has a new, I think it's even in this one, the Patriots Handbook for religious freedom in public schools. There is a new thing due to the Lemon Law being broken, where you can say, my curriculum or an activity that your school is forcing you to do, it could even have to do with what Tony's saying about the pronouns. I disagree it because it comes against my faith beliefs. You actually can be excused from that activity. You have to go through a process of writing an email and make sure that your principal gets it right away. But they're not supposed to make you do things that you would not want your name attached to, which is huge.
It really is. And for teachers that don't know, that struggle with that because they don't know what they don't know. But there are more rights that you have as a teacher in a public school setting and in any school setting than what you may think. And I find this is years ago, we actually put Bible studies in the schools in Leavenworth, the middle schools and the high schools. And in fact, I had elementary school want the same thing. And as long as they sponsored, there was a sponsor for that. As long as it's student initiated, you can still participate. And as long as the teacher is not, trying to convert anyone to Christianity, then you're right. Because of that dilemma law, you can say and do, as long as you're not attempting to, win somebody to the Lord in that public school setting or in that private school. My daughter went to a private Christian school, and so it was, quite a bit different there. But in the public school setting, there you have all the rights to do exactly what you said.
That's so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's awesome.
Is there any other let's see, legislative pieces, Tony, that would help us to know more about our freedms
Now,
in the schools?
when it comes to legislation, I don't have anything new.
Okay.
What I'll do is, I have a couple of legislators that are friends that I will find out anything in regards to something, the latest, if there is any.
Okay.
And the reason I haven't seen it, I've
Okay.
looked, I've not seen any recent legislation come through the
Okay.
Kansas State House on Education. Usually, if it is, it's something to do with money.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times it's finances and the school asking for more money. And that's always a huge issue because schools all over, they have tons of money,
Right.
rainy day funds with millions of dollars. So it's, for teachers to have to go out and buy their own supplies and that kind of thing is ridiculous because the schools actually have money for that.
I
So
wish we knew that. That would be
yeah,
good.
well, it was one of the things that was a surprise to me was just that the amount of money that the schools have in whether it's a slush fund or rainy day fund, literally millions of dollars set aside. And you can go through and get and I'll get you the link that you can look at
Okay.
the school district and the schools and know how much money they have. I had the superintendent of schools here in Leavenworth years ago was telling me that his game plan was to pit the parents and the teachers against each other and sit back and watch to be able to get more financing because the parents are saying, hey, look, the schools
Right.
aren't getting money. They need more money. The teachers are saying they need more money. But what he's not saying is that they have money.
Okay.
There's money set aside in these funds. And again, it's millions of dollars. So
I'm curious because I always thought this when I was teaching in public school, you have money that is designated to only be spent on certain things, but those things actually didn't need that much money. So the money is actually being caught somewhere. It's not used for what it's needed for, but it's designated for something they actually don't need. Is that how it's kept? Okay.
there is that part of it. There is
Uh-huh.
also, again, this fund where there is, where there is literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, just sitting. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it was a huge issue for us. And at that time, we were really trying to get the information out because it wasn't something that was being spoken.
Okay.
It was we happened to know because we were on that committee.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
And for teachers who would like to know more about like what's happening as far as government and legislation for like who's on these committees and things, I feel like we don't really know, Tony, if they wanted to get a hold of someone or see what's happening or who would they contact?
I will do a couple of things. I would contact my state rep. My
Okay.
state rep should be able to provide that information and kind of guide me to what I'm asking.
Okay.
There is the legislative journal where if you go to the Kansas State House website, you can go through. If you're looking for something specific, you can find specific bills. It gives a box where you can be generic education, and it'll give you a list of anything that's there. But I would go to my state rep first and then kind of follow up my state senator if I'm not getting an answer. But between the two of them, you should be able to get whatever you're needing or asking for when it comes to the system. Absolutely.
Okay. Because I think sometimes some people just get bogged down by the list of to-dos and then it's like, who do I contact? I don't even know who to talk to. And so that's good information.
Donna Leopold keeps good, an eye on that kind of stuff too. So there's some networks and some groups that are out there that can provide information.
Like Culture Shield. Yeah.
Okay. You might have to do a little homework.
Yeah.
But Alliance Defending Freedom, again, the reason I go to them is because they have a group specifically dealing with public school issues. And so they're a good resource when it comes to some of the laws and issues that public school teachers are facing.
Okay. That sounds good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Tony, I appreciate your time today. And I'd like to end on a note of encouragement. I know that we've kind of shared a bunch of information and I want to make sure we leave our teachers with a word of encouragement. Like what would you leave our listening teachers with today before we close?
I'm going to refer to my notes because I actually wrote something down in regards
awesome.
to this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do that.
Please.
I had an opportunity to speak with a public school teacher. I travel within my region and teacher in Arkansas, a Christian teacher in the public school setting, who was dealing with some of the issues from her students, whether it's the disrespect, which is really huge nowadays, the language, she brought up the foul language coming out of their mouths. There's no filter there. And being videotaped, no matter where she was at, she felt she was under a microscope. The other thing that stood out, though, is she felt she was all alone. As a Christian teacher in the public school setting, she had no support because the other teachers in this school were liberal, and so she felt all alone. In fact,
Right.
she was talking about retiring within the next couple of years, and really wanting to get out of that environment. And there, I'm sure there are teachers in the public school setting, Christian teachers in the public school setting, that are like struggling. It's
Yeah.
just a difficult environment to be in day after day after day, and being challenged and being told you can't involve your values or what you believe in the public school setting. But like we were talking about, they can do more than what the school is saying they allow them to do. There's so much
Right.
more they can do. So I have just a couple of things. One, I want to say this: in the scripture, Joshua 1:9 comes to mind. He says, have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? It's so important that the teachers take courage. And even in feeling alone, you're not really alone. And I'm probably preaching to the choir, because I know Christian teacher, if they're a Christian teacher, that they take time for the Lord in prayer, and just, getting filled and putting on the armor of God. I would encourage them to do that every day. I would encourage everyone to do that every day. But be bold and be courageous. The beauty of some of the cases that I pointed out is that these teachers were bold when they were challenged to say, okay, I won't stand for what I believe. I will compromise that. They did not. And I believe when we compromise, we give the enemy a foothold, just a foothold, and we'll never garner that inch that we gave. They're going to take that and more. If they can shut us down, if they can suppress us, if they can keep us quiet, all the better for them. But when we take courage, when we're bold and we say, no, this violates what I believe. I cannot do this or participate in this because it goes against what I believe. I can't refer to her as a him and him as a her because it violates what I believe. Then that's where the difference gets made. And even when, like I said, the teacher that they fired, the coach that was fired, we regain that when we stand, because these cases are going before courts that are saying, that's a violation of First Amendment rights. You cannot do that. And these schools are having to, change what it is that they said, and these teachers are able to keep their jobs. So I would just first say, be bold, be courageous in your faith, and recognize that God's with you. Wherever you set your foot, God is with you. That the weapons, 2 Corinthians 10 tells us that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. They're not like the world's weapons that they fight with, but our weapons are made mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. So I would just keep that in mind too, that we're not fighting as the world fights. Obviously, we're not fighting flesh and blood, but we're not fighting as the world is fighting. Our weapons have divine power. We have the power of God. And we are, and I want to say this and to the teachers, you're light in a dark place. They're light and salt. And it's so important that they recognize that for especially the students that are there that are lost. And I don't know how many stories I've heard how school, for example, is the only place that they've gotten food, because at home they're not fed. Or they're struggling because dad isn't in the home, which is probably the biggest part of this. Dads are not in the home, and the kids are struggling. You just never know what's going on in their life. But to be light and salt and expressing the love of Christ in the school setting is so vitally important. And I would encourage them to continue to do that. It's a challenge. I get it. I know it is. But if God's called you, he makes a way. He does. And he does it, in other spheres of influence, and definitely in the public school setting. And again, not to compromise. And I think that's probably one of the bigger ones, because it's easy, because fear sets in, intimidation sets in, which are totally not God. But we succumb sometimes because we're afraid. And I get it. Jobs. I mean, we need our jobs, because we're putting food on the table. We've got bills, we want to be paid. But at the same time, when we begin to compromise in little ways, then that opens the door for compromises in big ways. And for all the teachers that are standing up and saying no, there are teachers that have done that, have given in and succumbed. And I know they've struggled with that. That's so discouraging. But even if that's happened, if you've been a teacher that has done that, just go to God and allow God to forgive you. And then I believe and it happens all the time, there's other opportunities that come up where you can make a stand. And I just encourage them to do that. And it's not taking them for granted, not saying that it's easy, but it's what's right and it's what's true and it's what's reality. And I think in public school setting, like with anywhere else, truth and reality is so needed. When we're dealing with kids that are questioning their gender, we've got kids that are being told that, young ladies, having abortions and that information not getting to parents, or saying that, I'm a girl today, so let's go through the process. A boy, let's go through the process. Or a girl saying I'm a boy, go through the process of, the genital changes and the puberty blockers and all that kind of stuff that's going on. It's so twisted and it's so perverted. And it's such an environment where we just need light, life, and truth.
Yeah. And they get to choose as teachers to provide another way, that there's actually another thought to have. And it's a God thought.
And
like, what is his perspective on this? And some of them have never heard it. It's not mainstream. And so it's like not the thing they're seeing on social media, or their friends are talking about it, or maybe even anyone in their neighborhood. But like the unpopular opinion sometimes puts a question in, like, oh, there's another way. And so I just encourage Christian teacher that you are providing the other way, and it could help unlock people from being stuck or living a life that's going to, especially for these kids that have gender. I mean, we read story after story about how depressed and
suicidal.
Yes. Then they go down this like even shame, even if they're not a believer, it comes up in a huge way, and they just want to end everything or change back.
You bet. And you're right, story after story, and on the news, on different programs. And the other thing is this that I find and I see, and you probably know this, that those voices that are the loudest are the smallest groups. There's only a small percentage but they seem to be given the biggest platform to voice what it is that they want. So it makes it appear that they're far bigger than what they are, and they're really not. So if we maintain our ground and we don't compromise and we challenge that, we begin to see just what's really going on there. And every time that at least what I've been able to see, we're winning in the courts. We are winning as Christians.
So encouraging.
So I just want you to be confident and courageous. We're winning. And it may not be in the mainstream media. They may not talk about it, but the evidence is there.
That's good. That's really encouraging. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, Tony. We appreciate it. And teachers, I hope you feel the charge that you are not alone, that you're empowered not only by the law, but by God's word, and that you are positioned in a place of impact for this season for a reason. And the King is with you and he's empowering you. And so we just speak blessing and life over you to hold your ground and to be who God has called you to be in that place, that you are salt and light, and you're an ambassador of the King, and you wear his signet ring of approval and favor. And so we just speak that over you today in Jesus' name.
Amen. Absolutely.